Hello there, I'm Gina Gardiner and I'm very pleased to join you today on my 12th day of a 30-day challenge. I'm an international best-selling author, I'm a relationship and an empowerment coach, and I work strategically with businesses, helping them to get the very best out of their people in order to be more profitable and to ensure great work-life balance. I'd like to talk to you today about partnerships. And for me, the principles of partnerships are very similar when you're talking about business partner or you're talking about your significant other. Why is it that so many relationships start off brilliantly? People think that the other person is just what they need. They feel great about the partnership and they go in, and yet those partnerships break down really, really quickly. You can hear my cat Leo, who's moaning in the background. I fed him, but he actually wants some sweeties, so do forgive me. He may present himself in a moment. Think about what makes a great partnership. And I would suggest to you that ultimately the thing that makes a great partnership can be looked at in a number of ways. And the first is there has to be shared core values. Now, the core values are the things that you hold very precious, the things that you hold really essential to who you are and how you live your life. The challenge is that we use words like love, integrity, trust, care, compassion, humor, but we all mean something different. We have a different blueprint, a different plan for what that means to us and the behaviors we need to experience in order to feel that that core value has been validated. So I was talking last night to my marketing coach, and we were talking about business partnerships. And he was explaining to me how in the past a business partnership had gone spectacularly wrong because the person who he had become a partner with was actually somebody who had no integrity. They were building a business off the back of the business that they were doing jointly. His partner was not actually doing his fair share of the work. He was siphoning off money. So trust, integrity, fairness, all of the things that they might both have said were important, obviously meant very, very different things to both those people. I find it quite interesting in the business context how often I work with clients who have gone into a partnership within their business. They've invested huge amounts of time and energy and often money, and yet they don't really know how that other person is expecting to operate in the context of that partnership. They've never talked about it. And what they've done is they have made assumptions that the other person thinks about things in exactly the same way as they do, which is great when they do, but it can be absolutely disastrous when they don't. And so often, quite a lot of the work that I do in the business partnership arena is to be setting out clear roles and responsibilities and expectations one of the other and getting those formalized, both in terms of setup, how they're going to operate, and how they're going to exit the business too, because that can often be when things can turn very badly wrong. One person wants out, the business won't be sustained certainly in its current form if one of them leaves. So you have a situation where one wants to go and one doesn't. And of course, if you have more than two partners, every time you add another person, you compound the challenge of having a shared understanding and a shared set of values that everybody understands and behaviors that everybody can recognize as being the sort of behaviors that will allow those people to work alongside. Now, I work with a number of businesses where there are family run or they are friends who have become partners in business. And it can cause all sorts of challenges when people want to say something but immediately that they say something, it's taken as a personal attack. And so you can't have those calm conversations about the situation or the future without there being a big explosion. And that's often where I come in, because I can ask those questions. I don't have the same emotional charge as somebody who's a member of the family or somebody who's a close friend. But it would seem to me that a lot of the problems that come through the business arrangement could be sorted out if beforehand there had been a clear, structured conversation or conversations about how they were going to operate together, what everybody was going to do, how much time they would spend doing it, what would be deemed fair by both. And it's no good if one person thinks they're being fair and the other person actually has a view that they're being unfair. So with all of this, it is about creating a shared, agreed understanding. Now, you might think that that would be very different in the personal relationship situation. But I would suggest to you, although you won't necessarily go to a lawyer and get a contract drawn up, most people don't, but actually the principles are the same. I work a lot with couples who are having difficulties. And the first thing that I ask them to look at, well, after having ascertained whether they want the relationship and if they're prepared to work at the relationship, is what are the core values? Most people have never thought about what are the things that are so important to them that those are the things that they would fight for. It's a really good exercise to do if you are in a relationship, for both of you to create a list of your core values separately and then prioritize those into your top 10, because you can have endless lists of core values and they are all true, but some of them will be really more important, non-negotiable really. And those are the ones that are worth really looking at and communicating and working on. So, as I say, if you're already as a couple, it's a good thing to do. It doesn't matter if you've been married a little time or a long time. If you've done it before, it's worth revisiting. But that's only the beginning, because understanding the words that people use around core values isn't enough. You need a translation, if you like. You need to understand, what does that person mean specifically, and what behaviors do they need to experience from you or to do themselves in order to feel that that value is being honored. So if you think about trust, what does trust mean for you? And that's one of the things that comes very high on both business and personal partnerships. Does trust mean that you'll never lie? Does that mean that even if your wife or your partner says, does my bottom look big in this, that you're going to say, yes, dear, it does? Or many people will sort of dress that up. Or does trust mean something much more fundamental to you around fidelity and, not having an affair? But for some people, trust will be, well, you won't go and talk to that beautiful woman across the room, or you won't flirt with that man because you're married or you're in a partnership with me. But trust is so much more than just fidelity. Into trust comes, how do you manage money? If you're in a partnership where one partner has an attitude and beliefs around money which are, you must not get into debt whatever happens, and the other partnership believes that debt's okay, what happens if there is a situation where one wants to spend money and the other doesn't? And can you trust the other partner, when you're not there to be their conscience and say, we don't need that, we can't afford it? Trust comes into physical relationships. Now, here I'm talking about personal partnerships rather than business partnerships. But when two people are being intimate, they're having sex, they are incredibly, or can be incredibly, vulnerable. If you don't trust your partner, if you haven't identified with your partner where are the boundaries, that can be a huge opportunity for trouble within a relationship. And it seems to me that core values, which cover every aspect of life, what are the core values about family? How often have you heard of a couple where one is family oriented, the other not, and then there are tensions about how often you go and see the parents, or how often you spend time with the extended family? The core value and the behaviors around those things are in themselves not the thing that will break up the marriage, but they act as something that corrodes and gradually works into the cracks. And if there are other cracks, what it does, it widens them. So having created your list of core values, I would then sit down and talk quite openly about, in order to feel loved, this is what I need to have in place. In order to feel that I can trust you, I need this to be in place. And of course, it works both ways. It's not a one-way street. So if you're going to need certain things from your partner, you need to know what they need from you. And having that conversation, recognizing that within any conversation, there are three conversations going on, really. There's what you're saying, there's what they're hearing, and that goes two ways. So there's your language and your conversation that's yours, their language and conversation that's theirs. But actually you need a third one, which is the combination of the two with a shared understanding. And if you're talking about a Venn diagram, it'd be the bit between the two circles, where both have an absolute clarity about what is said and what is meant. And remember, about 50% of your communication when you're actually in the same room is not words, it's your body language. And about 30% is tonality. Very, very few percentage actually of the meaning that's taken is taken from the words that you use. And that's really important, because you can be saying with your mouth things that are in line with values, but actually if you're not at the same time, your body language and your behaviors are not following those, that language will be meaningless. Think of the word thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. It has a completely different meaning. But part of that is the facial expression, the body language. And there are lots of non-verbal languages, like slamming the door, like flouncing, like withdrawing. And you need to think about, what are the behaviors that your partner needs from you in order to feel loved, to feel that you that they can trust you, to feel that you are kind, to feel all of the things that you feel that are important. And what is it that you need to be doing in order for them to feel the same? Now, let me give you 2 or 3 examples. And you may have heard some of these examples before, but the reason I use them is because they exemplify it so well. Working with a couple, and we'd done the work on values, and we were looking at the word love. And I asked them, what did they need from their partner in order to feel loved? And the woman said, I need him to buy me flowers. And the guy said, but I do, every day, every Friday. He was beside himself. He thought that was really unfair. And she said to him, actually, you don't. What you do is you dump a bunch of flowers in the trolley. That's not buying me flowers. And he thought about it for a moment. And then he took on board that that had no more significance than putting a tin of beans or a packet of cornflakes into the trolley. What she needed him to do in order to feel loved and valued was for him to go and choose a bunch of flowers and to present that to her, not just dump it in the trolley. I'm reminded of another couple where there were significant issues around communication and around affection. And I think it's really important to make a distinction between affection and intimacy or sexual activity. Women in general really need affection. Although I don't want to stereotype men and women, in my experience, and maybe that my experience is skewed, but in my experience, women really value affection. They value romance. They value somebody putting a little note in their underwear drawer saying, love you, or sending them a text and making sure there's a loving emoji or there are kisses on it. Hugs are hugely powerful, cost nothing, but they are, I think, they cement relationships, and not just significant others, but within the family, with friends. There was some research done that showed that people who were hugged and touched regularly actually had lower blood pressure, better immune systems, and they lived longer. When I've worked with couples, very often, for men, touch is the prelude to sex. And, the having a hug is not seen as a neutral act, an affectionate act, but actually it's around something, I'll give you something I think you want, if you give me something I want. And I think there's a lot of that bartering, both within the personal relationship and the professional relationship, where it is, if you do what I want, then I'll let you have a little of my attention, or I'll let you, I will give you something that you want. And there's this bartering that goes on. Put it into the context of the personal relationship, it's certainly not unconditional love. It's absolutely conditional. I'll give you my approval. And this is true of parents and children. I'll give you my approval. I'll give you my attention. I'll give you my praise if you do something that fits in exactly with what I want. Now, it's an interesting one because you want children to recognize, or your partner to recognize, when they're doing things well. But where that falls apart is where the conditional of I will only give you love and affection, love and intimacy, if you follow exactly what I want. That's much more about power than it is about love. And it puts somebody into victim mode rather than having two interdependent people. If you're dependent upon somebody, then the relationship is unbalanced. If you have a relationship, and there are many of them, where one of the partners is seen as somebody who needs fixing, the other partner is constantly doing things for them and doing it with good heart. But the minute that person, the person who's been on the receiving end, starts to grow, starts to stand up on their own 2 feet, the partner who's been providing the help and support suddenly feels that their identity, their position is being eroded, and they don't like it. And it's quite common, certainly in my experience with clients, that women who have been at home, who have been the homemakers, and who have maybe a little part-time job, but they've not really stepped into their true power, their intellectual, emotional and organizational power, and they decide to study, or they decide to do personal development, and suddenly, instead of being this very this person who's kept themselves small with poor self-worth, who's not really been genuinely who they are, when they start to grow, the other partner finds that threatening. And for me, a loving relationship is where both people are better for being together than they are apart, and both partners want the other person to be the best they can be, to grow, and they don't feel diminished by the other person's development. And I think that's a really important point, that you want the best for them, and it isn't about one person being better or than the other. It's about both people being their best selves, being their genuine, authentic best selves. What I would say to you is, if you're in a partnership at the moment, which is you're finding difficult, you have to start with you. You can't change them, you can only change you. And so think about the behaviors that you use, think about the language that you use, think about how you respond. And remember, most of us are responding habitually most of the time. And start to think about how you can shift that by changing the way in which you either bring things up or you respond to things. If you want some help, there's lots of information on the website, genuinely-you.com. If you're in a business relationship, I would urge you that before you actually embark upon your business, that you start to look at each aspect of the business and look at how the two of you are going to operate within that. What are the checks and balances that are going to be in place? And how are you going to make sure that it's fair, equitable, and that there is an exit strategy that is set up really before you start? I hope it's been helpful, and if it has, please pass it on to others. Now, I'm going to ask you for some help. I have a mission, and my mission is to positively impact on 1 million people within the next 5 years. And in order to do that, I need your help. The work that I'm doing with people, particularly through the Thrive Tribe membership, and if you want to have a look at that, you'll find the link at the end of this, is about helping people step into their spiritual dimension, their spiritual power, to be spiritual matriarchs or patriarchs, to actually lead by example, to model the behaviors they want to see in others, and to step into their self-confidence, their self-belief. Because if you believe in yourself, then other people will believe in you too. If you have a problem as a leader or manager, don't blame the staff. Look at how you're managing them. Have you set high expectations? Have you held them to account? The same within a family. Are you clear about, as a family, how you're going to operate and why that's important? And are there causes and consequences with your children, for example? All of those things are part of my mission, which is to help people step into their genuine power, and in doing so, be able to help other people. And in the commentary in the box, I put all sorts of ways that you can help. Join us in the Genuinely You group and like the page. Share these videos and make some comments. Give me some questions, ideas of things that you'd like covered, because I will cover those in coming sessions. So thank you very, very much for joining me. If you'd like a free digital copy of my latest book, Thriving Not Surviving, you can find that on my website, genuinely-you.com, and that's my gift to you. Please pass that link to as many people as you want to. They too can have a free digital download of the book. So thanks very much, and I'll see you soon. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye now.